Robert Scribbler here with the OBX Wave Report. I am your reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and the beaches. And for today, we're going to talk a lot about waves and weather, as right now we're experiencing some very warm conditions across the Outer Banks. Temperatures right now ranging from the upper 70s to lower 80s for most beaches. Waves in the range of 1 to 3 foot, and I did get out to Jeanette's Pier today to practicing my pops and turns, trying to get my hips to wake up a little bit, get some power in those turns there. Of course, with the small waves, you can't really get too much power, but got a decent little ride here that I'm going to share with you guys as I talk. So yeah, just gorgeous day at the beach. Lots of folks at the beaches, and fun day for me practicing little turns with quick little takeoffs, pop-ups, and that was a little backside, little turn practice there. Of course, still need to get those hips opened up a little bit more, but starting to work on that, and things are starting to look pretty good. Um, Not going to go too much into like a climate science preamble. I've got some special discussion on El Nino planned later today. But what I did want to show you is sea surface temperatures. We do show you a lot about sea surface temperature anomalies because anomalies show you the variance from the norm. But I did want to show you just where the ocean temperatures are now generally in the Gulf of Mexico and the US East Coast. And just offshore, we've got temperatures in the 74-degree range off of the Florida Panhandle, Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. You get closer to shore and the ocean water temperatures cool down a little bit, but not too much. And then you get out into the Gulf and you've got ocean water temperatures in the 80s and getting close to 81 degrees Fahrenheit here in the central Gulf for some regions. These are very warm, about 4 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, maybe 5 in some places, maybe 2 in other places. This is about 2 weeks to a month ahead of the typical warming for the Gulf of Mexico. Um, so just something to keep an eye on with regards to the tropics. You get those warmer waters and you can start sustaining those tropical cyclones a little bit easier earlier in the season. Of course, this is right on the edge. You typically need about 75-degree ocean surface temperature to sustain tropical cyclone development. And near the coastline, you've got that. Offshore, you've got ocean water temperatures well in the range of sustaining tropical cyclone development. Of course, other factors have to come into play for a warm core system, but I did want to show you that since we're going to get a lot of fronts apparently, according to the models, getting down into the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll just have to keep an eye on things. Nothing coming up from the National Hurricane Center, but I did want to show you guys those sea surface temperatures and discuss a little bit about hurricane climatology and hurricane formation. Well, not just hurricane, tropical cyclone climatology and tropical cyclone formation. Right now in the afternoon, it is April the 6th, about 3:30, well, it's 3:24 right now p.m. We've got a large frontal system sweeping from Texas all the way to the U.S. Northeast. This has spawned a big spate of severe weather across the United States, particularly for parts of the central United States. And thunderstorms are still firing along this frontal boundary, so we're not under the gun, although the severe weather potential has tamped down a bit. And looking at the cloud tops, I did want to show you the enhanced brightness of the very cold cloud tops up over parts of Texas, getting into Arkansas and Louisiana, parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, and then streaming off toward the Great Lakes region. And here off the US Northwest, we've got another storm system sweeping in. It's worth noting that California, for the most part, has been spared the rain and storms, with most of the storms now angling in toward Oregon and Washington. We do get that shift as it starts to warm up in the springtime where we get drying across parts of California. There is this area of disturbed weather here that is moving off toward the west. It's kind of looking tropical wave-ish. So I don't know. Might want to keep an eye on that. That's an interesting feature. And let's see. I did actually want to show you guys National Weather Service radar. Do we have that? There we go. So also looking at the National Weather Service radar, we do have those storms in the central U.S. Doesn't look like too much in the way of severe weather statements up, except for possibly some flood watches and warnings. And then we've got here on the Outer Banks, we're starting to get those gale watches and warnings popping up. And I did want to show you that ahead of the nor'easter that is expected to start to come into play tomorrow. So gale warning up south of Oregon Inlet and then heading on all the way down south to Wilmington, I think, where we have gale watches up. We're expected to see strong winds start to pick up tomorrow and then gale force to near gale force conditions Saturday and Sunday with winds starting to taper off on Monday, but rough conditions likely lingering on in through Monday, probably maybe even Tuesday. But by Wednesday and Thursday, it looks like we are going to get some really good waves here in the Outer Banks. So let's hope that those wave forecasts hold up. All right, so let's get into some of the local observations using our Google Maps for informational purposes. I'm going to start off here at Genex Pier. Actually, I do want to give a little brief spot observation for Kill Devil Hills. Oops, we're not. There we go. Kill Devil Hills up in this region. Waves in the range of 1 to 2 foot at Kill Devil Hills. Just did want to point that out there. If you guys are looking for some bigger waves for the North Beaches, Kill Devil Hills looks like it's the spot. Right now at Jeanette's Pier, waves are in the range of about 1 foot. I'm going to say 1 foot plus. I went out there, got some 1.5, maybe a 2 footer here and there. Primary swell coming in at 9 seconds out of the southeast at Jeanette's Pier. That is a 0.9 foot swell. Secondary swell also coming in out of the south-southeast. That one at 5 seconds. That's a larger swell in the range of about 2 feet. A little bit of wraparound on those swells occasionally. Winds coming out of the south, 19 miles per hour. That is a cross offshore flow. Air temperatures right now in the range of 76 degrees Fahrenheit. The high so far for today at Jeanette's Pier, 78. That is pretty warm. Ocean water temperatures warming up a tick. It is 54 degrees now. Those waters are feeling a lot warmer, particularly you feel a lot warmer when the air temperatures are so nice and just overall much more pleasant. Of course, I'm still surfing in a full suit with hoodie, booties, gloves, although my full suit is 2.3 and 2.3s are rated more for 60-degree water temperatures. But I've been surfing in that thing all winter, so call me crazy. In any case, it is partly sunny. Expected high in the upper 70s. We probably already reached that. And then as we get into the evening, chance of showers after midnight as that front approaches and the nor'easter conditions expected to start to come into play by early tomorrow morning with those winds starting to whip out of the northeast. Okay, now let's head on down south. I'm going to go on past Coquina Beach and past S-turns where the waves are also in the range of about 1 to 2 feet. And then heading down to Rodanthe, where the waves are also 1 to 2 feet with a primary swell coming in at 6 seconds. That is out of the southeast. That is a 2-foot swell. And the secondary swell coming in at 9 seconds. That's a 1.1 foot swell out of the east-southeast. Right now, winds are out of the south-southwest at Rodanthe. That's at 16 miles per hour. That is a fresh cross and offshore flow, offshore with a cross-shore component. Air temperature right now at Rodanthe, 81 degrees, very warm down there. So high in the lower 80s down there, pretty nuts, very summer-like. Ocean water temperatures pretty, warming up a bit to 58 degrees Fahrenheit. So warmer water temperatures on tap down there at Rodanthe. And weather conditions, partly sunny, highs in the lower 80s. By later tonight, around midnight, we got a chance of showers as that front starts to move in. And so change in the weather as the front moves in. And again, the nor'easter conditions start to take hold early tomorrow morning. All right, just want to briefly note that Avon wave heights are in the range of 1 to 2 feet before we head on down to Buxton, where we find that the waves are 2 to 3 feet with a primary swell coming out of the southeast at 9 seconds. That's a 1.4 foot swell. Secondary swell also coming in out of the southeast at 5 seconds. That is a 1.5 foot swell. We got the primary and secondary basically lining up, and of course Buxton amplifying those waves to the 2 to 3 foot range as they head on down to the shoreline and toward the sandbar there. Winds out of the southwest at 14 miles per hour. That's an offshore flow. Air temperatures right now 76 degrees. Ocean water temperatures still hanging in there at 64. It's been pretty consistent at 64 at Buxton, although we start to expect to see those ocean waters warm up as we get more and more into April. Weather conditions also partly sunny, highs in the upper 70s. And as we get into the evening, as we get to midnight, we've got a chance of showers after the midnight time range as the front moves in, and then nor'easter conditions start to assert early in the morning. All right, let's get down to some climate and longer range weather observations. And right now, the global temperature anomaly is 0.174 degrees Celsius above the 1981 to 2010 reference period and already warmer than normal reference period. The Arctic is the only major region of the world that is cooler than normal. The tropics are warmer than normal, and the Antarctic rather warmer than normal at 0.75 degrees Celsius above normal, although that is a little bit cooler than recent days. With those anomalies backing off. Major zones where we got some hot spots. Well, here in the east, warmer than normal to much warmer than normal conditions as we've been experiencing. Warmer than normal conditions over parts of Western Asia. Australia still considerably warmer than normal. And parts of South Africa and large swaths of South America also warmer than normal. Once again, generally, global temperatures are warmer than normal today. I haven't seen a day yet in this series of observations that has been cooler than normal, and it is worth noting that the warmer than normal global temperatures are driven by fossil fuel burning. All right, so let's get down to the NOAA quantitative prediction forecast for the next 7 days. And what pops out to me? Immediately, you've got this big blob of expected heavy precipitation running from the Gulf Coast to the U.S. East Coast just off of Hatteras. And this says nor'easter to me. We've got nor'easter in the forecast. And we're expected to see this nor'easter persist for at least 3 days, possibly more. So we've got a pretty solid little nor'easter coming in here. I don't expect conditions to be too severe, but nonetheless, a nor'easter here for the Outer Banks, a multi-day event. And then the Pacific Northwest is also expected to see some pretty heavy precipitation, with most of the rest of the country not really getting too much. This according to NOAA's quantitative prediction forecast. Looking at Interesting. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to be talking about El Nino, and I just noticed that there's some La Nina El Nino news here in the at the Climate Prediction Center with NOAA's new spring outlook. NOAA is stating that La Nina is expected. I'm sorry, La Nina has ended and INSO-neutral conditions are expected to continue through the northern hemisphere spring and early summer. And I'm going to talk more about El Nino as we get into it. But what I did want to show you is the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks for temperature and precipitation. So let's see if it's going to do this. I have to click on it. Okay, so for the 6 to 10 day outlooks, we expect above normal to much above normal conditions for temperatures for the US East. And then for the US West, below normal conditions, rather below normal precipitation for the US East, with above normal precipitation running for parts of the upper tier of the US down to Texas and in through parts of the Southwest, although with some below normal precipitation expected for California. Now let's look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, where we see basically a continuation of this trend where the east is much warmer than normal and below normal precipitation, and for the 8 to 14 day, rather above normal precipitation for most of the rest of the country. So an interesting change in the weather with those warmer conditions expected for the U.S. East Coast. After the nor'easter, we can expect a return to the conditions that we have been enjoying here in the Outer Banks recently. Let's hope that we get some good swell on top of those warm conditions, and then life will be good for us here in the Outer Banks. In any case, we've got thunderstorms expected for regions running from Texas all the way to the mid-Atlantic, with a slight chance of um, severe thunderstorms across parts of North Carolina and Virginia. The front has already spawned some severe weather, so for those of you in western and central North Carolina and southwestern Virginia running through the um, Maryland, Delaware region, please pay attention to your local forecast as there is some potential for severe thunderstorms. And I do want to note that according to NOAA's Storm Prediction Center, damaging thunderstorms, um, let's see, there's a slight risk of severe thunderstorms this afternoon and early evening for parts of the mid-Atlantic. Damaging thunderstorm gusts and isolated large hail are possible over portions of the mid-Atlantic region this afternoon. And of course, you can get further into the forecast here at the Storm Prediction Center. Please pay attention to your weather and emergency broadcast. I don't think this is going to be too crazy, but we do have some severe storm potential. All right, so let's get down to the global forecast system model. I'm going to mainly talk about the nor'easter. So as we get into the day today, the front drapes down across the mid-Atlantic, and then as we get into tonight, it starts to sag across parts of Virginia and North Carolina. And then by the time we get into Friday, we have a high pressure system over the Great Lakes bringing in winds from the northeast and the frontal boundary creating like a bit of a trough. And between those two, you get those stronger winds off the ocean with some squally weather moving across the Outer Banks for most of Friday. This condition is expected to intensify as we get into Saturday with stronger winds off the Atlantic in the gale force to near gale force range. And then as we get into later in the day on Saturday and Sunday, an impulse of storminess and a low pressure begins to form off the Outer Banks as we get into Sunday, and we looks like we get the height of the nor'easter on Sunday with a high pressure system north and a low pressure system south, and those winds coming strong off the North Atlantic between the two, kicking up some pretty powerful surf. Looks like in the range of about 9 to 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15 foot waves. We'll have to see. And then as we get later into the day on Sunday, the impulse starts to move offshore, although we still have northeasterly winds coming in relatively strongly into early Monday, and then subsiding as we get later into the day on Monday, and then into Tuesday, calming. And then by Wednesday, it looks like nice calm conditions, but with a good residual swell. And I'm thinking late Tuesday, early Wednesday might see some really good waves here on the Outer Banks. A large base swell, but glacier conditions as those winds die down. I did want to note this impulse here to the south over the Gulf of Mexico, and it's one of the reasons why I talked about ocean water temperatures. And it does look like we're going to get some storminess developing along the Gulf Coast and then tracking in through the Florida Panhandle and parts of Louisiana. And I just noticed the more tightly woven isobars around this low. The National Hurricane Center doesn't have any alerts out on this thing, but it does look interesting, and we do have warmer than normal ocean temperatures out here in the Gulf. So I wonder if this system might start to develop some tropical features. It's just a wonder. I'm not predicting anything. It's a little bit of speculation, but given those warmer than normal waters and the way this thing is starting to form up in the models, it's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on. So something to keep an eye on for Wednesday and into Thursday of next week. And then generally, I want to just show you the tendency for storms to start to form here off the US East Coast as we get into next week. Looks like possibly another nor'easter by next weekend, although this one doesn't look as strong. Um, Nonetheless, a low pressure center forming near the Outer Banks and then tracking on north and eastward Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. And then some stormy, rainy conditions as we get into Monday and Tuesday. Of course, this is grain of salt territory for weather prediction and analysis, but looks like potential storminess, not just for this weekend, but next weekend if the model forecasts are correct. Now let's get into our wave forecasts. And right now we've got waves in the range of 2 to 3 feet in the near offshore environment. Swell coming in from the southeast for the most part. As we get into the day tomorrow, this swell is gonna swing around to the northeast as we get those strong winds starting to blow, and it's gonna get choppy and rough pretty quick. I mean, even dawn patrol tomorrow, the waves will still be small. It's likely to get choppy and rough with strong northeasterly winds starting to blow even early tomorrow morning. But as we get into the afternoon tomorrow, at around 2 o'clock, the swell, the near offshore waves are going to be in the range of about 6 feet just off of Nag's Head and Jeanette's Pier, and then off of Buxton also in the range of about 6 feet with those stronger conditions. Then as we get into Saturday, the waves really start to pump up with strong easterly and northeasterly winds getting into the near gale force range. Waves in the range of about 9 feet near offshore for Nag's Head and parts northward, and then off of Buxton, waves in the range of 10 feet. So 9 to 10-foot waves in the near offshore environment on Saturday. And then as we get into Sunday, it really starts to pop with, looks like waves in the range of about 11 to 12 feet in the 11 to 13 feet in the near offshore environment. And just offshore, we got significant wave heights in the range of about 18 feet. So large waves, strong winds coming in, gale force or near gale force conditions expected on Sunday. And then by the time Monday rolls around, the winds start to calm down as the storm moves offshore, but we still have, looks like 9 to 12-foot waves on Monday, and very rough conditions likely still on Monday. But then I'm going to go ahead and tease this out as we get into Tuesday. Um, just to show you guys, by early morning on Tuesday, the waves have started to tamp down to the 6 to 8 foot range. So possibly by mid to later in the day on Tuesday, we might see some good waves. I don't know, maybe even dawn patrol. I don't know how crazy I am. If the if the waves are not so choppy and they're in the range of 4 to 7 feet, if it's nice, like clean, glassy 4 to 7 foot waves, I think I might try it early on Tuesday. But if it's like crazy choppy, still rough, I don't know. I don't yet have the confidence for the giant waves here. Still getting the kinks kicked out of this Lost Rocket. It does have a little bit of a tendency to dig the nose in. I'm used to riding a board with more rocker, and um, I don't want to give myself like a giant spill on like a huge ass, oops, excuse me, bleep. But yeah, a huge gnarly Outer Banks wave. I don't want to give myself a big spill on it. Although part of it is wave selection and that kind of thing. We'll see. But I mean, I am getting a lot more confident. But confidence, you don't want to be overconfident and then do something stupid. I don't want to drill my head into a sandbar, for example. So yeah, I'm starting to get my musculature up, my physicality, and don't want to ruin that by doing something stupid and getting an injury. So we're gonna play it on the safe side. I think 4 to 7 foot for now is and like glassy is my limit. Um, Once I get more tricks together, I might start pushing it up a little bit more. But these little waves have been fun for practice, and I am itching to try things out in some bigger surf, so but just not too big. All right, so that is the wave forecast for the April 6th edition of the OBX Wave Report. We didn't talk too much in the way of climate or climate science. I think I'm going to break that out today as well. I've got a lot of things to do today, but I think I owe you guys some special focus videos. But as I always do, I would like to please ask you guys to do everything you can to save our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change. Fossil fuel burning is causing the world's glaciers to melt. And when those glaciers melt, they dump mountains of ice into the oceans, and this causes the oceans to rise. Um, and an unstable coastline is not good for anyone. But for those of us who live here at the beach, it means that our homes are at risk, our livelihoods are at risk, and for those of us who surf, it means that we don't have reliable um, breaks or stable coastlines, so that there's just so much to lose. And then in addition, the heat that is caused by the fossil fuel burning, by pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which traps the heat, also is a an engine. Heat serves as an engine that powers storms. And so here on the coastline, we are under the gun for more intense storms as well. Now, if you think I'm just saying this because I live on the coastline, it's for all of us. Anyone, anywhere is under the gun from worsening threats by climate change. But since I'm here on the coast and I'm a surfer, I want to highlight the risks to the coastlines and get everyone thinking about how precious our coastlines are to us. So I'm asking you, please, to help aid the mass deployment of clean energy. And the clean energy systems that can be rapidly deployed now are wind power, solar power, water power, and electric vehicles. The supply chains and the industry supporting that, and the throughputs for those industries are large, and they are growing larger. And so we can have a very fast learning curve when it comes to those technologies, and we can get to 80%, 90% carbon emissions reductions just by mass deploying those systems. According to some of our best experts, we can get to 100% carbon emissions reductions just relying on those systems. However, there's another thing that we can do that can be really helpful, which is also mass deploying electrolyzers. I'm going to say electrolyzers. Electrolyzers. Electrolyzers do this really cool thing. They take water and they zap it and they turn it into hydrogen and oxygen. And you use electricity to zap the water to create the hydrogen, and then the hydrogen is green hydrogen if you are using solar power or wind power or water power to zap the water to create the hydrogen. And so you got that green hydrogen. And once you've got the green hydrogen, you can do most of the things or pretty much all the things that you do with fossil fuel with the green hydrogen. And the more elect the more electrolyzers are out there, the lower the cost of green hydrogen gets. So I'm going to start advocating for the mass deployment of electrolyzers as well, because we do need the green hydrogen for things like steel. Even if the green hydrogen is not really working that great for automobiles, it might work well for things like aircraft. And that molecule hydrogen, you can combine it with various carbons to create synthetics without the need for fossil fuels. And so we start to get rid of the need for extracting the fossil fuels and we for materials, which is a really good thing. Of course, we're gonna want to look at how to not make those chemicals as gnarly and as nasty as the chemicals that are coming from the petrochemical industry, because those things are just bad for the environment as well. But just a lot of versatility and a lot of good things that can come from climate action. So let's do it. Let's mass deploy that clean energy. Let's do it all. Let's get to net zero and net negative carbon emissions. Let's save our coastlines. Let's save all the other good things that are under the gun from rising global temperatures. All right, so a little bit of a long end discussion on my appeal to you guys to please help us save our beautiful coastlines and all the other things. Thank you for joining me once again, and I will be back with you shortly.